Joey Jones, we couldn't really get from the Pentagon today an accurate accounting of what had been left on the ground there. And there was at one point where the spokesperson, Admiral Kirby, was saying, well, we destroyed a lot of the things, there were some things that, we left behind, but we destroyed a lot. I'm reading what they likely have. And that scenario from Ben Sass there, the senator, seems awfully realistic based on what I'm reading.
No, absolutely. I think I tweeted just a few minutes ago when Kirby answered the question about weapons. If you listened at how deliberate he was, he essentially said, we don't want people who might want to do us harm to have possession of these types of weapons. And so really what he was trying to do was carve out a path in front of him that basically says, yeah, the Taliban has our stuff, and maybe we can work with the Taliban, and then it won't be so egregious that they have it. I mean, that's essentially the way he was speaking. I don't know if that's exactly what he meant, but with these briefings, especially from Kirby, but the president as well, you're not only reading between the lines, you're really reading the intent. And we can talk more about the president in a few minutes, but that's a terrible place to be in.
I want to pause there for just a second, and KT, just let's ruminate over what Joey just said about, it's one thing to have to fact check, but when you have to read somebody's intent, that is not a good space to be in, because now you've got to decide whether or not you can trust the people who so many American lives are in the hands of.
Yeah, but I think it's even worse than that, is because that the Taliban, we're looking at the Taliban and they're speaking as if it's one group, like a central command authority. They're going to give orders out and everybody around the country is going to follow their orders. That's not what Afghanistan is. It's a lot of tribes. And a tribe is just an extended family. And a tribe is in a province. And so if we've got Americans, we probably have thousands of Americans all around the country, 2 or 3 at a school, maybe in Herat province, or maybe we have an agricultural cooperative near Jalalabad. And you don't just get in your car and drive on I-95 5 hours to get to Kabul airport. These people are not going to get out. Yeah. They are not going to be rescued. There's just a handful of them at each place. And when we say, well, the Taliban, we're counting on the Taliban, you cannot predict what some 25-year-old hopped up kid, and everybody in Afghanistan has a gun, what they're going to do to the Americans who are at that school down the street trying to make their way to Kabul airport. That's why what Joey said I really am struck with, because the words are all very carefully chosen. They always keep saying Americans who want to leave. And I think they're going to get to the point to say, well, if they didn't show up at Kabul airport, clearly they didn't want to leave. Yes. And so they're going to have that excuse of why they left people behind.
So, you know what, and Joey, you're in the center seat today for a reason, as always, but this time because you really are the center of the spokes on the wheel here. I want to come back on this point of intent, and I want to tie that to what KT McFarland is saying, just in terms of our responsibility to get everybody out with the date certain of August 31st. Publicly, the Taliban have said that there will be consequences if we stay beyond that date. So what Pete Hegseth and I were talking about last hour is that means you got to start to get your people out around August 28th, because it's going to take you 2 or 3 days to get all those troops up off the ground and back in the air. So what is the Pentagon? What is the president's intent to tell us that they are in charge of what date we leave? Because we know that can't possibly be true. They'd be wrapping up the carpets now.
I think what we have is an overabundance of smoke signals, saying one thing, doing another, saying one thing, meaning another. I think the ultimate intent there is to not signal to the Taliban that they're going to stay past the 31st, but they presume they will. That's what I read out of it.
Don't you think the Taliban know? They see us on the ground. They see it taking days for us to put even approaching 7,000 people there. Troops.
I think that for the first time, I'm proud of a corps of press that sit there at the Pentagon and ask tough questions regardless of what outlet they are. And if they think they're smarter than those people, they probably think they're smarter than Taliban, and they're probably not really smarter in their words right now than any of us.
Wow. Kayleigh.
Yeah, hat tip to the Pentagon press corps. The questions they've been asking are in depth, are smart, are the types of things the American people want and deserve to know. So hats off to Jennifer Griffin and the rest of that press corps doing a fantastic job trying to get answers, Harris, but we're not getting answers. The only thing that we've learned out of all of this is that the Biden White House is really bad at numbers. They cannot give us an inventory of the equipment. They cannot give us a count of the number of people who have died at the airport in Kabul. Remember last week it was people hanging from planes. This week people getting trampled, and they can't give us a number. And then they can't give us the number of Americans stranded in Afghanistan, or they can't give us the number of Al-Qaeda. Remember, Joe Biden said it was 0, but in fact, it's far more than 0. They don't have a number. But the one thing they can tell us is that our intelligence capacity is vastly diminished because the number of troops on the ground there is no longer. What a scary scenario when you have a White House without facts and an intelligence capacity that is diminished.
Well, they could just tell us they don't have it. Right? I mean, you heard Admiral Kirby saying, well, let's just say thousands. Then let's not say anything if you don't really know. I do want to get to this, and then, Miranda, I'm coming to you. I'm going to ask our team to play out the section where they were talking about that timeline, in fact, at the news conference. Do we have it with the Pentagon spokesperson? Okay. Then let's go to the part where they were talking about the numbers, and they got into how are you deliberately trying to be vague?
You need to check the number. I mean, that's the most important number here, the number of Americans. So if it's just a matter of checking the number, can you do that and give it to us? Or if you're being deliberately vague, tell me why you're being deliberately vague.
I think I'm just going to leave it at several thousand right now, Dave.
Well, then tell us why.
Because I think the number is very fluid, and it literally changes nearly by the hour.
It's not more fluid than these 11,000, 37,000.
I'm going to leave it at several thousand.
Miranda.
Well, this is the sort of obfuscation and vagueness that we've had from day one, and it's inexplicable, really. Yesterday, we saw the President give us a whole ream of teleprompter statistics, but nowhere in there were the number of Americans that were evacuated. Now, that is a number that they do know, obviously, and I'm assuming that it's a very small percentage of the overall number. They're saying 28,000 were evacuated as of yesterday, and that was a mixture of military aircraft, civilian charter flights, and also NATO allies.
Yes.
But of those, they must know how many Americans. And then, the overall messaging has been a complete disaster from day one. I mean, at least from the Pentagon, they're giving regular updates and, within the constraints that have been placed on them by the White House, are trying to answer questions. But, from the State Department, from Anthony Blinken, from Jake Sullivan, you just get mixed messages, total disinformation, and from the President as well. And, they're trying so desperately to spin the narrative. They've forgotten that they need to be straight with the American people. And, from the start, and the President missed this opportunity yesterday, what the metric should have been, we are going to get out X thousand American citizens of ours that are there and any other allies that we can, and not put a timeline date on it. Just say, we'll be out as soon as we've got out X thousand of our people.
Well, look.
Otherwise, they've now tied themselves up.
They're going to have to put a lot more people on the ground to do that. I mean, Joey, I'm going to wrap it with you as we head to commercial. 7,000 isn't going to do it, and you're going to have to open some other airstrip out. You've created a single zone here, and if we have to stay beyond August 31st, we've already been told there will be consequences. Now, we're going to pray that that's not here at home and that it stays on the battlefield, but my gosh, what a hellish place for American citizens to have to navigate beyond August 31st. Your last quick thoughts will move.
Yeah, I think he gives the vague term several thousand because he knows exactly what the number is, and he knows it won't be something that Americans are satisfied with. And the next question is, where are the rest of the Americans? And that question leads to how are you going to get them to the airport? And that's not where he wants to go right now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.